Every single year, companies waste millions of dollars on projects that were pretty much doomed from the very start. And the reason? It's not because of bad teams, it's not a lack of effort, it's almost always poor selection. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the consultant's playbook for choosing projects that don't just succeed, but deliver massive strategic value. Let's get right into it.
So here's a question that probably keeps a lot of managers up at night. You invest all this time, money, your team's energy into a new initiative, and what happens? It stalls out, it underdelivers, or it just fails completely. The enthusiasm is there, right? The resources are allocated, so what is the missing piece? Well, the problem usually starts way before the first task is ever even assigned.
And this quote, man, it just nails it. The root cause isn't poor execution or a lack of resources. It's that the project was the wrong choice from day one. See, we end up choosing projects based on gut feelings or, who's shouting the loudest, instead of using a disciplined, strategic framework. And that is exactly what we're here to fix.
To do that, here's our game plan. We're going to start by really defining the core problem. Then we'll build out the anatomy of a perfect project. We'll figure out where to find the best ideas. I'll equip you with a consultant's toolkit for analysis, and then we'll get to a really powerful framework for making that final decision. And lastly, we'll touch on how to manage a project pipeline after you've made your choices.
All right, let's dive into the core problem here. See, choosing the wrong project isn't just a missed opportunity. It is a massive drain on your organization. It chews up budgets, it burns out your best people, and it totally erodes confidence in your improvement efforts. It's this hidden cost that can absolutely cripple growth.
And just to be super clear, we're talking about a very specific type of project here. A Six Sigma project isn't for when you already know the fix. Nope, it's for those really complex, thorny problems where the solution is a total mystery. It requires this structured, data-driven approach, which makes that initial selection even more critical. You just can't afford to apply this level of rigor to a low-impact problem.
Okay, so if we're going to avoid these costly mistakes, the first thing we have to do is define what good actually looks like. Before we can find the right projects, we need a really solid blueprint for what a winning initiative is. Without that, we're just guessing. So let's build that blueprint right now.
Think of this as the ultimate checklist. A truly strong project isn't just a good idea. It's an idea that checks every single one of these boxes. It has to be directly linked to what the company is trying to achieve. It solves a real, painful performance gap. It delivers a meaningful financial return. And this is crucial. It has to be measurable. If you can't quantify the starting point and the end goal, how can you ever prove success? And notice the practical stuff too. A 3 to 6 month timeline keeps it focused. And full management support? Well, that ensures you actually have the resources to get it done.
So we have our checklist for what a great project looks like. The next logical question is, where do we find these golden opportunities? They don't just fall out of the sky. You have to know where to look and, maybe more importantly, how to listen.
Broadly, you can think of these ideas coming from two main buckets: inside your own walls and from the outside world. Internally, you've got a wealth of data from process assessments, rework logs, and, super important, your own employees. They are on the front lines every day. Now, externally, the most powerful insights almost always come directly from the voice of the customer. The key isn't to pick one over the other. The best project pipelines are filled with ideas from both inside and out.
Let's double-click on that voice of the customer piece for a second, because it is so critical. We can gather this info in two ways. Reactive methods, that's all about analyzing the data that comes to you. Complaints, support calls, website traffic. It's valuable, but it's all history. The proactive approach, that's where you go get the insights, through interviews, surveys, and my personal favorite, observation, or going to the Gemba, which literally means going to where the work is happening to see it for yourself. This is how you find the unstated needs that lead to those real breakthrough improvements.
Okay, so now we have a list of potential projects. Here comes the really critical step: analysis. This is where we shift from subjective ideas to objective evidence. We've got to use the right tools to dissect these opportunities and actually validate their potential.
Our first tool is Hoshin Kanri. The best way to think about it is like a strategic compass. Its entire purpose is to make sure that the projects we're considering aren't just random acts of improvement, but are directly tied to the company's biggest, most important goals. So, for example, if the company's #1 goal is enter the European market, a project to optimize the North American supply chain might be a good idea. But Hoshin Kanri forces us to ask, is it the right idea for us right now?
Next up in our toolkit is FMEA. This is our risk assessment tool. Before we even start a project, FMEA forces us to kind of put on our what-if hat and think about everything that could possibly go wrong. It helps us anticipate potential failure points in a project. A project that's aimed at eliminating a high-risk failure you found in an FMEA, well, that is often a very high-impact project.
Then we've got Kaizen. Now, while Six Sigma is for those big, complex problems, Kaizen is all about creating a culture of continuous, small, incremental improvements. So why is this in our selection toolkit? Because sometimes the best project isn't some massive Six Sigma thing, but a series of smaller, faster Kaizen events. This tool helps us right-size the solution to fit the problem.
Finally, we have a 1-2 punch for translating customer feedback into action. First, the Kano model helps us figure out what to work on. It separates the must-have features from the delighters that create real customer loyalty. Then, once we know what to focus on, the critical to quality tree, or CTQ tree, tells us how to measure success. It'll translate a vague customer need, like faster service, into a specific, measurable requirement, like order confirmation in under 30 seconds. See the difference?
So we've identified opportunities, we've analyzed them with our toolkit, and now we probably have several strong, viable projects on the table. This brings us to the final and, frankly, the most critical step, making the decision. And we are not going to make it based on a gut feel. We are going to use a data-driven framework.
This really is the moment of truth, isn't it? You've got 3, maybe 5 excellent project candidates. They all seem valuable, they all have support, they all passed our initial checks. How in the world do you break the tie? How do you make sure you're picking the one project that will deliver the absolute maximum impact for the business right at this moment?
The answer is a weighted scoring matrix. And this tool is brilliant because it turns those subjective debates into an objective, data-driven process. You list your criteria, you weight how important they are, and then you have stakeholders score each project. Now, calculating the score is the easy part. The most important part is that last step, the discussion. When the marketing team scores a project way differently than engineering, that's not a problem. That is a critical insight. The matrix doesn't just give you an answer, it surfaces hidden assumptions and forces strategic alignment.
And here's what that looks like in practice. After you score and weight everything, you just multiply the score by the weight for each box and then add them up. The math doesn't lie. In this example, Project C is the clear winner with a score of 56. It might not have been the most popular choice going in, but the data makes the case. This framework gives you an objective, defensible reason for your decision that everyone can get behind.
So, you've made your data-driven selection. That is a huge victory, seriously. But selection is just the first step. To make sure these high-impact projects actually get delivered, it helps to have a simple system for tracking them. Let's look at one quick example of how that might work.
A simple tool like a Kanban board is perfect for this. So at the individual level, a developer's board might track these really specific granular tasks. It gives total clarity on what needs to be done right now.
Now, if we zoom out to the team level, those individual tasks start to roll up into larger chunks of work. A team lead doesn't need to see every single line of code, but they do need to see these major pieces of the project moving across the board from to-do to done.
And if we zoom out one more time to the department level, the view becomes even more high level. The department head might only need to see the major initiative, extend user account, and its overall status. That's the power of a visual system like this. It gives the right level of detail to the right audience, making sure everyone's aligned without being totally overwhelmed.
So we'll end with this thought. The difference between a good year and a great year often comes down to the handful of strategic projects you decide to pursue. The framework we've walked through today isn't just about process, it's about being intentional. It's the difference between just starting the next thing on the list and strategically selecting the one initiative that's going to create the most value. So the question to ask yourself is, are you just starting projects or are you truly selecting them?